Did you know that the key to true happiness isn't found in the things we own or the relationships we cling to? It's a surprising truth, but one that the ancient Stoics understood well. They taught that real fulfillment comes from mastering the art of detachment, from letting go of the things we can't control, including our emotional ties to people, possessions, and outcomes. If you want to reclaim control over your emotions and free yourself from the constant chase for validation, you need to understand how the ego plays a role in keeping you stuck. The illusion of control and the desire to hold on to things that no longer serve you are some of the biggest myths we believe in life. Avoid this mistake. If you want lasting happiness, stop searching for it in external sources and learn how to cultivate it from within. Today, we'll dive deep into the power of detachment, the dangers of attachment, and how to break free from emotional clinging to unlock a more peaceful, fulfilling life. Number 1. The power of detachment. Reclaim control over your emotions. Think about the moments in your life when you felt truly free, like a weight had been lifted from your shoulders. Perhaps it was during a walk in nature, surrounded by nothing but the sound of rustling leaves and distant birds. In that moment, you weren't tied to your phone, your schedule, or anyone's expectations. You were simply present, and that sense of freedom washed over you, creating a sense of peace and joy. This feeling is the foundation of detachment. It's a state where you're free to experience the world without being controlled by external forces or emotions. But life doesn't always stay in those peaceful moments. More often than not, we find ourselves deeply attached to people, situations, or outcomes. We want things to go a certain way, for others to act in a way that brings us comfort. But when we cling too tightly, we give up control. It's like handing the keys to our happiness over to someone else, letting them decide how we feel. Maybe you felt this in a relationship where your mood depended entirely on the other person's actions. When they were kind, you were happy. When they were distant, your world felt like it was crumbling. The core principle of Stoicism teaches us that true happiness comes not from controlling others, but from controlling our reactions. Marcus Aurelius reminds us that you have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. Detachment is not about becoming cold or indifferent. It's about loosening the grip that external things have over us. Imagine your emotions like a kite. The wind pulls it in all directions, representing the unpredictable nature of life. If you hold on to too many strings, whether it's relationships, work, or social expectations, you become overwhelmed, constantly tugged in different directions. Detaching is simply about holding on to the strings that matter and allowing the others to drift away. As we grow older, we often reflect on times when we allowed others to have control over our emotions. Think about a time in your past when you held on too tightly. Maybe it was a friend who didn't treat you with respect, or a job you desperately wanted but didn't get. Looking back, you might realize that what you were holding on to didn't deserve so much of your energy. Detachment teaches us that it's not the things themselves that hold power over us, but our attachment to them. And now, think about what life could be like if you truly practiced detachment. What if the actions of others didn't have the power to sway your emotions so drastically? What if you could approach life with the calm knowledge that your peace comes from within, not from external approval or circumstances? Curiosity sparks here. What would happen if you fully embraced the power of detachment? Could this practice transform the way you navigate your relationships, your career, and your inner world? Detachment is not about caring less. It's about caring for the right things, the things within your control. Imagine the freedom in that. Number 2. Understanding attachment. Freeing yourself from the ego's grip. Let's take a moment to remember what it was like to be a child untouched by the complications of the adult world. There was a time when we didn't know what it meant to be attached to someone or something in the way we do now. Back then, love and happiness were simple. You weren't worried about whether you were good enough or if someone might leave you. You simply existed, surrounded by joy and curiosity. That's what love feels like in its purest form, unburdened by ego, free from the need to control or possess. As we grow older, however, the ego takes over. The ego whispers fears into our minds. You need this person in your life to feel valued, or if you don't hold on tightly, you'll lose everything. We begin to define ourselves by our attachments, whether it's to people, possessions, or even ideas about who we should be. But this attachment is the ego in disguise, clinging to things in an attempt to feel secure. Stoicism teaches us that true love and contentment are not found through attachment. The ego wants us to believe that we need these external validations to be whole, but that's the trap. Understanding this concept begins with realizing that attachment is a form of fear. We attach ourselves because we're afraid of losing something or someone. But the irony is, the tighter we cling, the more likely we are to suffer. When we let the ego guide our emotions, we're not living authentically. Instead, we're living through a lens of fear, constantly worried about loss. The key to freeing ourselves from this grip is to recognize that our worth doesn't come from these attachments. Whether it's a relationship, a job, or a status, our true essence remains intact, no matter what. Do you remember a time in your life when you felt deeply attached to something or someone? Maybe it was a person you thought you couldn't live without. Maybe it was a career path that defined your sense of identity. Now think about how that attachment influenced your choices, your emotions, and your sense of well-being. Over time, you may have realized that this attachment, rather than bringing you peace, was actually the source of anxiety. Looking back, it's often easier to see how the ego was at play, creating an illusion that you needed something outside of yourself to be complete. Now, what if you could detach from this need for validation? What if you could strip away the ego's demands and live from a place of love and security within yourself? When you stop attaching your self-worth to external things, a whole new world opens up. You begin to live in alignment with your true self, not the version of yourself the ego wants to project. Curiosity kicks in here. What would life look like if you no longer needed anything outside of yourself to feel whole? How would your relationships change if you approached them from a place of abundance rather than fear? By freeing yourself from the ego's grip, you open yourself to a more authentic, love-filled existence. Number 3, the illusion of the ego. Why emotional clinging distorts reality. We've all been there, looking at someone else's life and thinking, if only I had what they have. Maybe it's the perfect relationship, the dream job, or the seemingly flawless life. Social media makes this illusion even stronger, with perfectly curated images and stories that highlight the best moments of others' lives. It's easy to fall into the trap of comparison, believing that other people have something we lack, and clinging to the idea that we need to be like them to be happy. But here's the truth. This comparison is a product of the ego. It's an illusion that distorts reality and creates unnecessary emotional suffering. The ego convinces us that our happiness depends on external circumstances, that if we could only achieve or possess what others have, we'd finally be content. But this is a lie. Stoicism teaches us that the source of true happiness lies within ourselves, not in the things we acquire or the people we know. Emotional clinging, whether to people, outcomes, or ideals, distorts our perception of reality. We begin to believe that without these attachments, we're somehow incomplete. But the reality is we are whole just as we are. Think back to a time when you felt envious of someone else's life. Maybe it was a friend who seemed to have it all together, or a co-worker who always got the promotion. In those moments, you might have felt like you were falling behind, like you were missing something essential. But as time passed, perhaps you began to see the cracks in that illusion. You realized that no one's life is as perfect as it seems from the outside. We all have struggles, insecurities, and challenges that aren't always visible. The grass only looks greener from a distance. Now imagine what it would feel like to let go of this illusion, to stop comparing yourself to others and start appreciating your own journey. What if you could see your life for what it truly is? A unique path filled with its own challenges and triumphs, but no less valuable than anyone else's. The curiosity that follows. How would your perspective change if you stopped clinging to the idea that someone else's life is better than yours? How much lighter would you feel if you could release the need to compare and instead focus on your own growth, your own path? Detaching from the illusion of the ego allows you to see clearly. It empowers you to stop chasing after external validation and instead find contentment in the present moment, in who you are right now. This shift in perspective is liberating. It frees you from the emotional chains of comparison and allows you to embrace your unique journey with confidence and grace. Number 4, detachment in practice, letting go of past relationships and FOMO. Take a moment to think about how it feels to carry the weight of past relationships. The people who once held significant places in your life may no longer be present, but their influence still lingers. Perhaps it's an old friendship that drifted apart, a romantic relationship that ended unexpectedly, or even a family dynamic that shifted over time. No matter how much time has passed, it's hard to let go, isn't it? We often cling to memories, wondering what could have been, replaying old conversations, and trying to make sense of the endings. There's a certain sadness there, a nostalgia for the times when everything felt intact. This attachment to the past, to relationships that are no longer part of our present reality, is a burden we often carry unknowingly. But Stoicism reminds us that clinging to the past prevents us from fully living in the present. The people who have come and gone were part of our journey for a reason, but their absence now doesn't diminish the value of their presence then. Detachment, in this sense, is not about erasing the memory of those relationships, but about freeing ourselves from the emotional weight they still hold over us. Imagine how it would feel to finally let go, to accept that some relationships were meant to be temporary and that their end doesn't signify failure or loss. Instead, it signifies growth, both yours and theirs. It's hard to let go because in many ways, we fear that doing so means forgetting, or worse, invalidating the experiences we shared. But letting go is not forgetting. It's allowing yourself the space to move forward. Holding on too tightly to the past keeps us stuck, unable to embrace the new opportunities, relationships, and experiences waiting for us. Have you ever found yourself scrolling through social media, seeing photos of people you once knew or events you weren't invited to, and felt a pang of regret or sadness? That's the modern-day fear of missing out, FOMO. It's a powerful force that keeps us tethered to the illusion that we're always missing out on something better. But FOMO, just like our attachment to past relationships, is a product of comparison and clinging. We cling to the idea that life is happening without us, that everyone else is moving forward while we're left behind. But what if we shifted our perspective? What if instead of focusing on what we don't have, we focused on the opportunities we do have? What if we let go of the need to be everywhere, to be involved in everything, and instead embraced the present moment? When we practice detachment from past relationships and FOMO, we allow ourselves to be fully present in our own lives. We stop chasing after what's already gone or what we fear we're missing, and instead, we create space for what truly matters. Think back to a time when you finally let go of something you were holding on to, a relationship, a grudge, a missed opportunity. How did it feel to release that emotional weight? The relief, the lightness, the sense of peace that followed. It's something we all long for, but it's only possible through detachment. Now, imagine applying that same practice to your everyday life. How would it feel to let go of the constant need to be involved, the fear of missing out, and the attachment to what once was? Curiosity comes alive here. What could you gain by letting go? How might your life change if you stopped holding on so tightly and allowed yourself to flow with the natural rhythm of life? Number 5, the path to true happiness, finding value and fulfillment from within. Happiness. It's something we all chase in one form or another. We search for it in relationships, in career success, in material possessions, and in experiences. There's a deeply ingrained belief that happiness comes from external sources, that if we can just find the right job, the right partner, or the right lifestyle, we'll finally be fulfilled. But how many times have we reached those milestones only to find that the happiness they bring is fleeting? It feels good at first, but eventually the excitement fades, and we're left wanting more. This constant chase leaves us exhausted, always reaching for the next thing, but never quite satisfied. The Stoics offer a different perspective on happiness, one that isn't dependent on external circumstances, but rather on our inner state of mind. Marcus Aurelius said, "Very little is needed to make a happy life. It is all within yourself, in your way of thinking." True happiness, according to Stoicism, is not found in the things we acquire or achieve, but in the way we perceive the world and ourselves. It's about finding contentment within, regardless of what's happening around us. Think about the moments in your life when you felt truly content. Maybe it wasn't when you achieved something grand, but rather in the quiet, simple moments. Sitting with a cup of coffee in the early morning light, sharing a laugh with a close friend, or reading a book that resonated deeply with you. These are the moments where happiness isn't tied to achievement or success, but to presence and inner peace. It's in these moments that we realize true fulfillment comes not from external validation, but from a deep connection with ourselves and the world around us. Detachment, again, plays a key role here. When we stop tying our happiness to external things, we free ourselves from the constant cycle of desire and disappointment. We no longer need to chase after the next big thing to feel good about ourselves. Instead, we find value in the present moment, in who we are and what we already have. It's a radical shift in mindset, but one that brings lasting peace and fulfillment. There's a sense of nostalgia when we think back to simpler times before we were caught up in the hustle of life, before we felt the pressure to constantly achieve and accumulate. Maybe you remember a time in your youth when you were content just being, without the need for more. Those moments of simplicity remind us that happiness was never about what we had. It was about how we felt within ourselves. Returning to that state of being, where we find value in who we are rather than what we own, is the key to lasting happiness. Now imagine what your life would look like if you fully embraced this mindset. What if, instead of chasing after external validation, you turned inward and found peace in the present moment? What if you could stop worrying about what you don't have and start appreciating what you do? This path to true happiness, rooted in inner fulfillment rather than external achievement, offers a sense of freedom and joy that transcends the temporary highs of material success. Curiosity arises. What would it feel like to truly live from a place of inner fulfillment? To wake up each day knowing that your happiness doesn't depend on anything outside of yourself? To move through life with the quiet confidence that comes from knowing you are enough, just as you are? The path to true happiness is one of detachment, not from life itself, but from the illusions that tell us we need more to be happy. What could your life become if you fully embraced this way of thinking? If you've made it this far, drop 100 in the comments. This shows you're among the rare 0.01% of people who truly commit to finishing what they start. And that's a powerful first step toward real change. You've learned about the Stoic principles of detachment, how to free yourself from the grip of the ego, and how to build resilience by letting go of emotional ties that weigh you down. If you're serious about transforming your life and embracing these Stoic teachings, then make sure to join our community by hitting that subscribe button. This is just the beginning of your journey toward inner peace, clarity, and emotional freedom. Stay with us as we explore more ways to live a life of purpose and wisdom.